We need to get Raymond Ibrahim on too. His new book just
Yeah.
released today, and I'm going to be starting it tomorrow. So, I just read his. Well, I've just read his last two books, but the one Sword and Scimitar was the first, right? And then what was Defenders of the West? He goes through 8 men who were defenders of the West, and apart from the Vlad Tepes, Dracula, who was there's no one knows if he was really Orthodox or Catholic, but he was the only one that wasn't for sure Catholic. The other 7 of the 8 were all Catholic, and like learning about those men, just seeing.
Wait, Vlad was a real guy? I don't know, dude. I don't know this. I never studied the Crusades like that.
Oh, I thought you were just joking right now. Wait,
no, like I know the story of Dracula has to do with him having to fight off like a Muslim horde.
So
like,
yeah,
like his son, they wanted his son or something, right?
So no. So Dracula, Vlad the III, Vlad Tepes,
Vlad the Impaler or something.
Yeah. So that's what they called him. The Turks called him the Lord Impaler. But his title was Dracul, which is son of the dragon, because his father Vlad II was initiated into the knightly order of the dragon, right? One of these chivalric knightly orders for defending against the Turks. But Vlad and his brother were both given to the Turks by his father at a young age to kind of seal a peace. And his brother, I forget what his brother's name was, but his nickname was the Handsome. So I forget what his first name was, but his brother was very handsome. Anyway, so him and his brother are being raised more or less by the Turkish sultan and stuff, and is the Turks, as most people probably don't know, but the Turks really loved little boys. They were very into sodomy. Matter of fact, sodomy was often called the Turkish disease. The Sultan falls in love or in lust with Vlad's brother, the Handsome. Anyway, so they're raised by the Muslims. Vlad eventually is released. His brother is not. Vlad returns to Wallachia, and he ends up he's made into the prince. He's kicked out by the nobles after a while. He retakes his throne, impales all the nobles. And impaling was a very common kind of punishment at the time, especially by the Turks. So he's just using what he learned from the Turks, and he uses it as a weapon of terror, especially. So he subdues all the nobles who overthrew his father and who overthrew him the first time. He impales them all, raises all of his buddies in the army up into the nobility, and he basically, as prince of this little nation of Wallachia, defends all of Europe against the Muslim Turks. Really, around the same time, they just took Constantinople. So you're talking about the Ottoman Empire, who just took Constantinople, is being thwarted by a random Wallachian prince in like 10,000 guys in the middle of the Carpathian mountains. And Vlad has stalled out the Ottoman advance on all of Europe, and he takes any Turk that is captured, impales the Turk. When we say impale, it's through the anus, up through the body, out through the mouth.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and he puts them all in this. It ends up being called the Forest of the Impaled, and at one point there's like 20,000 Turks on pikes through their ass in this man-made forest.
This is so much more vulgar than the N-word, by the way.
But the Turks are terrified. Yeah. Right. And they literally call him.
You see 20,000 Turks impaled like that.
At one point, Vlad and a small force attack the Turkish camp in the middle of the night and come within inches of killing the Sultan. I mean, he was just a terror on the Turks. And like I said, this one prince in this small little nation, stalls out the whole
And
Ottoman advance.
how does that turn into Dracula? Like,
So
the legend is just so powerful that it becomes that.
So at this, not only was Vlad warring with the Turks, but Wallachia is right next to Transylvania. Transylvania is this little territory with a couple of cities that were populated by Saxons, Saxons from Germany, but it's in the Carpathian Mountains past Hungary. So it's this little exclave of Germans. That's why it's called Transylvania. And they were I think I forget the exact story, but they and Vlad were not friendly.
Yeah.
Right. So these Saxons, these Germans start writing propaganda against Vlad, saying he likes to drink blood, all this stuff.
And that's how the legend begins.
And that's it. It all begins as propaganda by a few German cities, in a territory next to Vlad. And of course the Turks pushed it too, right?
But ironically, them creating that propaganda is what makes the story endure. Like,
well, you got to understand, the propaganda failed. No one knew about it, right, until Bram Stoker writing his vampire tale, right? He finds this name, Dracula, Dracul.
yeah.
Finds some of the old propaganda about him and adds this into this vampire story he's making.
Yeah.
If he had chosen anyone else, you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't even know you wouldn't even know the story happened.
No, not at all. And
so that's what I mean. Like, that propaganda, the fact that a legend starts to be told about him.
Yeah,
like that legend is what make it, because you think about all of the legends of our faith, right? Like, they, of saints walking with their heads for miles after their heads are cut off, they pick them up and they still go and preach and stuff. Like, you wonder how much of that really happened the way we tell the legend. So, like, when we went to the Holy House of Loretto, the girl telling the story, I think I've told this on air, but the girl telling us about the Holy House was giving us two versions of it. She's like, well, the scientific answer is there was a man named Angelo and he transported the house during the Crusades to this town. But the legend is that angels carried the Holy House of Loretto from Nazareth to Loretto. And we were all like, don't tell us I want to hear the legend. Like, the legend is what I want to put my faith in, because the legend is the beautiful stories that angels carry the house along, and
yeah.
it's very much like the Dracula story. It's like, tell me the legend.
Yeah,
I want to hear
the legend in my view, the legend of Dracula is
less interesting than
the truth of Vlad Tepes.
Yeah.
In Vlad, he was a strong Christian. He raised by Muslims and their depravity. His brother, he has to fight his brother. His brother didn't, he has to fight his brother, who he saw raped by the Sultan over and over and over for years. And he raises his small little nation and stalls out the advance for decades and probably saves Europe. And of course, eventually he does lose. He's beheaded. His nation's conquered. Now Wallachia doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
In the end, he lost everything he was fighting for, but saved Europe. In reading about him and all these other men who literally gave everything for their faith and for their countries and for their families, and it's just such a dichotomy between them, and then seeing a bunch of older
Moroccans rape an Italian girl as her boyfriend is sitting there and watching.
Well, yeah, but I brought this up in relation to, like, the petty little trad feuds on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
the real traditionally, traditional Catholic men went to war and impaled 20,000 people through the ass.
But
Like,
I'm just saying that we went from understanding the enemy that we were really faced to welcoming them in,
yeah,
and now the things that they're doing to us, because we are upon, like, there's going to be another jihad on Christian lands because we welcome these people into our lands. There's no defense against it because we don't have a Christendom to defend us against what's coming. Like that story in Italy today, it was like pure nightmare fuel. This young couple, they're engaged, the girl's 18, and 3 Moroccan immigrants hold the boyfriend down and make him watch her get abused. And it's like, this is what our church defends now. Like in the sick, twisted way that we understand all this stuff. And it all goes back to what we talked about in the freaking YouTube section.
Yeah, but I would say, like, yeah, the church obviously isn't there supporting us, right, in this fight that's coming, but it often wasn't throughout history. Like these 8 guys that this book is, the book is on, like Paleo, that's the Spanish name for him, but he was Pelagius in Spain. Like you had the Bishop Otto, who was the bishop of the area of Spain after the invasion by the Moors. His bishop comes to him and tells him to lay down, to basically give up, to submit to the Moors. The bishop was working with the Muslims, and Pleo refuses and goes to the very very northern, mountainous coast of Spain, last little sliver of land, not conquered by the Moors. Prays in a cave at Covadonga, prays to the Virgin Mother, and then raises a small army, defeats the Moors at the Battle of Covadonga, and then that starts the Reconquista. From the last little sliver of land to 700 years later under Ferdinand and Isabella, conquering Granada.
All right, so we have to get Raymond Ibrahim on.
Yeah, man.
His new book came out today.
Yep. I forget what it's called.
Book.
Something the Two Swords of Christ. It's about the religious military